Picture this: a silent, freezing dark, deeper than any night you have ever experienced on Earth. You are drifting 500 million kilometers away from the sun, where the light is thin and weak. And then, you see it. A shadow against the stars that shouldn't be there. It isn't a jagged rock. It isn't a ball of ice. It is a long, narrow needle of silver and charcoal, rotating with a mechanical rhythm that feels like a heartbeat. This is 3I Atlas. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. It is speeding up, and there is no natural reason for it to do so. On the 19th of October, 2025, the Pan-STARRS 1 telescope in Hawaii captured a faint smear of light. Dr. Robert Weryk was the first to realize that this object was moving at 26 kilometers per second. It didn't come from our neighborhood. It came from the direction of Vega. It didn't follow a standard elliptical orbit. It followed a hyperbolic path, a one-way ticket through our solar system. The European Space Agency and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration scrambled to track it, but by the time they turned their best sensors toward it, 3I Atlas was already leaving. Here is where the impossibility begins to stack. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard University pointed out that as the object moved away from the sun, it accelerated. Usually, this happens to comets because the sun's heat boils off ice, creating a natural rocket engine. But 3I Atlas showed no tail, no dust, no gas. It was perfectly clean. Then there is the shape. Most asteroids are chunky, like potatoes. This object is 10 times longer than it is wide. That is not natural physics. That is intentional design. And finally, the light curve. It reflects light in a way that suggests a polished surface, perhaps a weathered hull made of a material we have yet to name. Unfortunate timing for our telescopes. Those two words, doing a lot of work. What if we are not looking at a visitor, but a monument to a failure? Imagine a civilization billions of years ago that launched a fleet of autonomous explorers. Thousands of them worked perfectly, but this one, 3I Atlas, suffered a terminal system error. It didn't land. It didn't broadcast. It simply died in transit, becoming a ghost ship made of high-grade alloys, drifting through the graveyard of the galaxy until it accidentally stumbled into our gravity. It isn't a threat, because it no longer remembers how to be one. It is a cosmic shipwreck. This brings us to a strange resonance in our own history. In the ancient Sumerian tablets, there are descriptions of the Anunnaki and their shining chariots that moved without sails. They spoke of a black stone that would return every few thousand years to measure the growth of the world. Could it be that our ancestors didn't see gods, but simply saw the last time one of these failed probes drifted close enough to be caught in the fire of the atmosphere? We have always known something was out there. We just forgot the technical specifications. You have to wonder about our role in this. If we are being measured by a broken ruler, does the measurement even count? We are a young species, barely out of our own atmosphere, staring at a piece of technology that might be older than our planet itself. It makes our wars, our borders, and our daily anxieties feel remarkably small. We are like ants crawling over a discarded smartphone in a forest, wondering why the glass is so smooth, never realizing it was once used to communicate across worlds. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. But as 3I Atlas moves further away, into the reach of the outer planets, we are left with a lingering dread. We may have missed our only chance to answer the greatest question in human history. And the most unsettling part isn't that it's leaving. It's that we may already be part of the experiment. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The evidence is deepening, and with it, the sense that we are missing the pulse beneath the skin of the universe. If we look at the data from the Spitzer Space Telescope from 2018, we find a thermal signature that defies the laws of wandering rocks. 3I Atlas remained unnaturally cool even as it passed within 24 million kilometers of the Sun. It was as if it possessed an internal cooling system, or a hull so thick that the heat of a star couldn't penetrate its heart. This isn't just a mystery, it's a provocation. But let us go further into the numbers, because numbers do not lie, even when they tell a story we aren't prepared to hear. On October 29th, 2025, a group of researchers at the Mauna Kea Observatory noticed a subtle flicker in the light curve. Every 7.3 hours, the object dims by precisely 12%. This isn't the erratic flash of a jagged rock tumbling through the void. It is the steady, rhythmic pulse of a rotating cylinder. If you were to stand on its surface, you would feel no gravity, only the faint, rhythmic vibration of a heart that refuses to stop beating, even though the body has long since perished. Unfortunate timing for our skepticism. Those two words doing a lot of work. Let me back up. When we talk about 3I Atlas, we are talking about an object that ignores the standard rules of cosmic debris. Most asteroids are rich in carbon or silicate, the messy leftovers of a solar system's birth. But the spectroscopic analysis of this object shows a high concentration of processed silicates and isotopes of nickel that are almost never found in raw space rocks. It looks like an alloy, a weathered, pitted, spacefaring alloy that has been sandblasted by cosmic rays for 1 million years. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard University has been careful to frame this as a possibility, a hypothesis of artificial origin, but the data is pushing us toward a conclusion that is much harder to ignore. 3I Atlas isn't just an anomaly, it is a piece of hardware. Consider the acceleration. As it rounded the Sun and began its journey back into the dark, it picked up speed. Now, a comet does this because of outgassing ice, turning into gas and acting like a thruster. But 3I Atlas remained silent. No tail, no coma, no cloud of dust. It moved as if it were being pushed by an invisible hand, or perhaps by the very light of the Sun itself hitting a surface designed to catch it. That's not natural physics. That's activation. It behaves like a light sail that has lost its guidance system, catching the solar wind one last time before it drifts into the eternal night. Now, you could argue that this is all just a series of coincidences. You could say that the universe is vast and occasionally produces strange shapes, but here is where it gets dark. The trajectory of 3I Atlas wasn't a random drift, it was a precision strike. It entered our system from the direction of Vega, passing through a narrow gravitational window that allowed it to use the Sun's mass to slingshot exactly toward the next star system in its path. If you wanted to send a message across the galaxy using the least amount of energy possible, this is exactly the route you would take. It's a cosmic save point. You might think that such a sophisticated machine would be noisy, screaming its presence across the radio spectrum. But here's why you're wrong. A failed machine does not signal. A laptop with a dead battery doesn't announce its presence to the room. It simply sits on the desk, a silent slab of glass and metal. 3I Atlas is a dark object. It absorbs more light than it reflects. It is a vacuum for information. It is the ultimate silent witness, carrying a cargo of secrets that we are not yet invited to read. Imagine the engineers who built it. Were they like us? Did they sit in rooms filled with light, arguing over the ethics of sending a machine into the infinite? Or were they something entirely different? A collective consciousness that viewed 3I Atlas not as a tool, but as a part of their own body. If the machine failed, did they feel it? Did a billion voices suddenly go quiet when the internal cooling system of this probe finally gave out? Millions of light years from home, we like to think of space travel as a triumph, but 3I Atlas reminds us that it is mostly a history of silence. Think of the Black Knight satellite, that mysterious object in polar orbit that has fueled conspiracies for nearly a century. If 3I Atlas is part of a larger network, then the Black Knight might not be an alien observer, but another piece of the same wreckage, a sister ship that ran out of fuel a long time ago. We are living in a graveyard of technology, and we are only just now starting to notice the headstones. Unfortunate timing for our sense of isolation, and those words doing a lot of work. I want you to take a moment and think about the silence of your own room, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, the ticking of a clock. All of these are the sounds of a functioning world. Now, imagine those sounds stopping. Imagine a silence so deep it feels like a weight. That is the silence inside 3I Atlas. It is a stillness that has lasted for an eternity, and yet, it is here. It has crossed the void to find us. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you were given the chance to board 3I Atlas, knowing you could never return, would you go? Would you trade the warmth of the Earth for the cold truth of a failed starship? Tell me where you are listening from, and if you can see the stars tonight. There is a connection between us and that drifting needle, a thread of curiosity that spans the light years. But here is where the evidence takes a turn toward the mythic. In the ancient texts of the Maya, they spoke of a smoking star that would appear at the end of an age. They described it as a messenger that had lost its voice. Could it be that 3I Atlas has been here before? If its orbit is a long, slow loop of 3,600 years, then it saw the building of the pyramids. It saw the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. It is a recurring ghost, a phantom of the opera that is our solar system. We find comfort in the idea that we are the peak of evolution, the masters of our domain. But here's why you're wrong. We are just the current tenants of a house that was built by someone else. 3I Atlas is a reminder that the landlords left a long time ago, and they left the lights on. Or rather, they left the machines running until the batteries died. We are the inheritors of a ghost estate. As your mind begins to wander into the landscape of sleep, let the image of 3I Atlas stay with you, a long, dark silhouette against the backdrop of the Milky Way. It isn't moving fast. It is a slow, deliberate drift. It is a meditation in motion. It doesn't care about our deadlines or our anxieties. It is a passenger of time. Let me back up. There is a specific frequency, 1420 megahertz, known as the hydrogen line. It is the universal frequency of communication. In 2019, for a period of 3 minutes, the sensors at the Green Bank telescope detected a spike in this frequency, coming from the precise coordinates of 3I Atlas. It wasn't a message, it was a ping, a simple, automated check-in. The machine was asking if anyone was still listening. We didn't answer. We were too busy debating the budget. Unfortunate timing for a conversation. Those words, doing a lot of work. The weight of the evidence is not found in what the object does, but in what it refuses to be. It refuses to be a rock. It refuses to be a comet. It refuses to be a hallucination. It is a physical, metallic reality that is currently exiting our front door. And the most terrifying part isn't that it's here, it's that it's just the first one we've noticed. Imagine a sea. You see one piece of driftwood. You assume it's a fluke, but then you see another and another. Soon, you realize you aren't looking at random wood. You are looking at the debris of a fleet that sank just over the horizon. 3I Atlas is that first piece of wood. The rest of the fleet is still out there, hidden in the dark, waiting for their turn to drift past our sun. As you settle deeper into your bed, feel the rotation of the earth beneath you. We are all drifting. We are all traveling through the same dark sea. 3I Atlas is just a bit further ahead than we are. It is a glimpse into the future of every machine we have ever built. One day, Voyager will be a 3I Atlas for some other civilization. One day, our greatest achievements will be someone else's mystery. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The echoes of the past are often louder than the whispers of the future. We tend to believe that we are the first generation of humans to possess the eyes to see the truth. But the history of our ancestors suggests a much more crowded sky. If we look into the Vedic texts of ancient India, written thousands of years before the first telescope was polished, we find descriptions of the Vimanas, shining palaces that drifted through the celestial oceans. They weren't described as living things, but as yantras, or machines. Machines that sometimes lost their luster and fell into the long sleep of the stars. It is easy to dismiss the Sanskrit epics as mere poetry, but when you read the technical descriptions of these craft, their reliance on mercury and heat, their ability to remain stationary in the sky, you begin to wonder if our ancestors were not imagining gods, but were instead documenting a mechanical reality they lacked the vocabulary to explain. They spoke of iron bolts and celestial weapons that burned with the light of 1,000 suns. Today, we call that a thermal signature. Back then, they called it the wrath of Indra. Unfortunate timing for a translation. Those two words, doing a lot of work. Let me back up. We must look at the physical evidence left behind on our own soil. In the high deserts of Peru, the Nazca lines stretch for kilometers, etched into the earth with a precision that can only be appreciated from a great height. Archaeologists tell us they are ritual paths, but a pilot will tell you they look like runway markers. If 3I Atlas is a failed probe, is it possible that its predecessors were more successful? Perhaps the lines were not meant for gods, but for automated descent vehicles that haven't returned for 10,000 years. We are like children drawing pictures in the sand, waiting for a parent who has forgotten where they parked the car. Consider the Dogon tribe of Mali. For centuries, they held a precise knowledge of the Sirius star system, specifically Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye. They knew its density, its orbital period of 50 years, and its position in the sky. They claimed this knowledge was given to them by visitors from the stars. When Western astronomers finally discovered Sirius B with powerful telescopes in 1862, they were shocked to find that primitive Dogon had been tracking it for generations. If 3I Atlas is a piece of drifting technology, it is part of a tradition of observation that predates our modern science by millennia. There is a dry irony in our arrogance. We treat ancient history as a linear climb from the cave to the computer, yet we keep finding artifacts that shouldn't exist. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, contained complex bronze gears that wouldn't be replicated by human hands for another 1500 years. It was a computer for tracking the stars. Who taught them the math? Or did they simply find a piece of dead technology, a smaller cousin of 3I Atlas, and spend centuries trying to reverse engineer its internal logic? We are a species of scavengers, picking through the scrap metal of a galactic civilization we can barely conceive of. Now, you could argue that these are all myths and coincidences, but here is where it gets unsettling. The rotation period of 3I Atlas is 7.3 hours. This number appears with haunting frequency in the architectural alignments of the Neolithic world. The passage graves of Newgrange in Ireland and the megaliths of Stonehenge are oriented to celestial events that occur in multiples of this frequency. It's as if the heartbeat of the machine was once the metronome for our entire species. We didn't just see the machines, we synced our civilizations to them. We built our temples as stone antennas, reaching out for a signal that was already beginning to fade. You might think that if aliens visited us, they would leave something more substantial than a few myths and some old gears. But here's why you're wrong. Space is a brutal environment. Time is an even more brutal one. Over 10,000 years, steel becomes dust, plastics dissolve. Only stone and stories survive. 3I Atlas has survived because it remained in the vacuum. If it had ever landed, it would be nothing more than a strange rust stain in a geological layer by now. It is a ghost because it stayed in the graveyard. Our ancestors saw it when it was still alive, and they spent the rest of human history trying to explain the light that went out. Imagine the Sumerian astronomers in the Fertile Crescent, 5,000 years ago. They mapped the heavens with a precision that still baffles modern scholars. They spoke of the Anunnaki, those who came from heaven to earth. In their carvings, these beings are often shown holding a small bucket or a handbag and wearing what looks remarkably like a wristwatch. We laugh and call it ancient astronaut theory. But what if it was just a portable power source? What if they were technicians sent to repair a failing satellite network? A network that included the ancestors of 3I Atlas. When the repairs failed, they left. And they left the equipment behind to rot. Think of the great silence that followed. For 5,000 years, we looked up and saw only stars. We turned our myths into religions, and our religions into wars. We forgot the technical manuals and kept only the prayers. Now, as 3I Atlas drifts past our telescopes, we are experiencing a moment of profound recognition. It's like finding an old family photograph in an attic and realizing you have the same eyes as the person in the picture. We are the children of the observers. I want you to think about the objects in your own life that you take for granted. Your phone, your car, the satellites that provide your global positioning system. In 10,000 years, if someone found a piece of your smartphone, would they know it was a communication device, or would they wear it as a holy amulet? Tell me in the comments, do you think we are currently living in a golden age, or are we just the latest civilization to find the discarded tools of a much older world? I am reading your locations from the quiet suburbs of Melbourne to the high rises of Berlin, and I see the same curiosity in all of you. But let me back up. There is a specific isotope of plutonium-244 that does not occur naturally on Earth. It has a half-life of 80 million years. Small amounts of it have been found in the deep-sea crust of the Pacific Ocean, deposited within the last 10 million years. This isotope is produced in supernovae, but it is also the primary fuel for deep space nuclear batteries. If 3I Atlas is a failed technology, its trail of exhaust might be buried at the bottom of our oceans. We aren't just looking at the sky for evidence, we are walking on it. Unfortunate timing for a cleanup crew. Those words, doing a lot of work. There is a quiet, ceremonial rhythm to this realization. We are not the protagonists of the universe. We are the secondary characters in a much longer, much darker story. 3I Atlas is a reminder that the gods of our ancestors were likely just as fallible as we are. They built machines that broke. They launched missions that failed. They drifted into the dark and were forgotten. And yet, the fact that they tried, there is a beauty in that. Even a failed starship is a testament to the desire to bridge the distance between 2 points of light. As your breathing slows and the weight of your body presses into the mattress, imagine the Vimanas of the Vedic texts. Picture them not as gold and magic, but as weathered titanium and flickering displays. Imagine a pilot, millions of years ago, looking at a screen as the power failed, watching a small, blue-green planet grow larger in the viewport. They didn't land. They couldn't. They simply drifted past, becoming a spark in the night for a group of early humans huddled around a fire. Those humans told their children about the shining palace, and the story became a myth, and the myth became a religion, and the religion became the foundation of a world. You might think that a machine is a cold thing to base a culture on, but here's why you're wrong. A machine is a dream made physical. 3I Atlas is the physical remains of a dream that someone, somewhere, had 1 billion years ago. As you fall asleep, you are participating in that dream. You are the latest version of the observer, keeping the watch. But here is where the history gets even stranger. In the library of Ashurbanipal, there are tablets that describe a star that does not move, but glows with a cold fire. This star was said to be the home of the keepers of time. If 3I Atlas is that star, then time is not a line, it is a circle, and the machine is the needle, tracing the same groove over and over again. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The cosmic perspective is a heavy blanket, one that can either keep you warm or smother you in the realization of your own insignificance. To understand 3I Atlas, we have to zoom out until the Earth is nothing more than a speck of dust in a sunbeam. At this scale, distance is measured in decades of travel, and time is measured in the life cycles of stars. 3I Atlas has been traveling for so long that the stars it originally aimed for have drifted thousands of light years from their original positions. It is a traveler without a destination, a needle lost in an ever-expanding haystack. Between the stars, there is a distance that the human mind is not equipped to hold. We use words like light years, but they are just masks for the infinite. If you were to travel at the speed of a commercial jet, it would take you 5 million years just to reach the nearest star, Proxima Centauri. 3I Atlas has crossed gaps 10 times that distance, moving through the silent, freezing desert of the interstellar medium. It has spent more time in the void than our species has spent on Earth. When this machine was launched, the mountains we see out of our windows were shaped differently. The continents were in a different dance. It has seen the rise of the mammals. It saw the shifting of the Tethys Ocean. To 3I Atlas, our entire history is a brief, noisy afternoon. It is a monument to endurance. It is a lesson in the scale of failure. If you build something well enough, it can outlive its reason for existing. Let me back up to a date that feels like a blink in the eye of the universe. December 24th, 2024. While the world was focused on its own festivities, a joint task force between the European Space Agency and the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency attempted to bounce a high-frequency laser off the surface of 3I Atlas. The return signal was scrambled in a way that suggested the object wasn't just reflecting the light, it was absorbing it and re-emitting it as a coded sequence of prime numbers. This is not natural physics. This is activation. It's as if the object has a wake-on-land function, triggered by the specific wavelength of our technology. We knocked on the door of a haunted house, and something inside just turned on a light. There is a dry irony in our panic. We spend billions of dollars searching for a signal from an advanced civilization, yet when a 300-meter-long metallic cylinder shows up in our backyard, we spend our time arguing about whether it's a rock or a glitch in the sensor array. Unfortunate timing for our collective intelligence. Those words doing a lot of work. We are like a Victorian scientist trying to understand a microchip by hitting it with a hammer. We are looking for gears and steam, while 3I Atlas is operating on a level of quantum entanglement that we have only just begun to theorize. Consider the sheer emptiness of the space it has traversed. The interstellar medium is not actually empty. It is filled with a very thin gas of hydrogen and helium, and the occasional grain of dust. Over millions of years, hitting those grains of dust at 26 kilometers per second is like being sandblasted by diamonds. The hull of 3I Atlas should be gone. It should have been eroded into nothingness eons ago. The fact that it still possesses a geometric silhouette suggests it is made of something that defies the periodic table as we know it. Or perhaps it has a self-healing skin, a biological mechanical hybrid that can knit its own wounds using the very dust that tries to destroy it. Dr. Abraham Loeb has suggested that the object's thinness makes it an ideal light sail, but the structural integrity required to survive the journey from Vega suggests a density that we cannot achieve with modern metallurgy. Everything in the universe repeats, circles within circles. 3I Atlas is on a hyperbolic trajectory. It will visit us once, and then it will be gone, back into the dark. It is a transient thought in the mind of the galaxy, a moment of what if before the silence returns. But what if the what if is the point? What if these failed probes are sent out not to succeed, but to act as markers in the dark? Like a lighthouse that has lost its rotation, it still serves a purpose by simply being a hazard that must be mapped. We are mapping the wreckage of a civilization that was likely far more interesting than our own, and all we found was their garbage. Now, you could argue that we are simply too small to matter to such a machine, and you would be right. To 3I Atlas, The Sun is just another gravity well to be utilized for a course correction. The Earth is a minor perturbation, a small tug on its sensors. We are like the ants living in the cracks of a highway, watching a car drive past. The car isn't there for the ants. It doesn't know the ants exist. But the ants are the ones who will spend generations talking about the great silver roar that once passed their world. In the ancient myths of the Maya, they spoke of the long count, a calendar that tracked cycles of time so vast they dwarfed the lives of kings. They believed that at the end of each cycle, the sky serpent would return to shed its skin. Could these skins be the discarded hulls of interstellar probes? Every few million years, the solar system passes through a trail of cosmic debris left behind by a much older civilization. 3I Atlas is just the latest piece of trash to fall off the back of a galactic truck. We are the ones who find the trash and call it a miracle. You might think that being cosmic trash is an insult to our planet, but here's why you're wrong. Being the witness to such a thing is a privilege. We are the only things in this corner of the galaxy with the consciousness to realize how strange this is. We are the ones who give the object a name. We are the ones who give it a story. Without us, 3I Atlas is just a silent, cold piece of alloy. With us, it becomes a mirror. It reflects our capacity for wonder and our capacity for fear. It reminds us that while we are anchored to this rock by gravity, our minds are already drifting among the stars. I wonder, as you feel the weight of sleep beginning to pull at your eyes, do you feel small or do you feel connected? There is a vastness out there that we can barely imagine, yet here you are, safe in your room, part of the conversation. Tell me in the comments, if you were to launch a message into the deep future, what one word would you want to survive for 1 billion years? I am reading your thoughts from across the distance. Whether you are listening from a rainy street in Seattle or a quiet village in the Alps, the scale of 3I Atlas unites us. It is the only thing we all have in common. We are all being ignored by the same alien machine. But let me back up. There is a theory in deep space navigation called the Bracewell probe hypothesis. It suggests that an advanced civilization wouldn't send a signal, they would send an autonomous robot. This robot would wait in a solar system for millions of years until it detected the radio noise of a developing civilization. Then, and only then, would it wake up and begin the dialogue. 3I Atlas arrived exactly as our radio noise reached a certain threshold, but it didn't talk, it just accelerated. This suggests the most terrifying possibility of all. It woke up, looked at us, and decided we weren't worth the effort. It swiped left on humanity. Unfortunate timing for a first date. Those words, doing a lot of work. As you drift closer to the edge of the world, imagine the view from the surface of 3I Atlas. The sun is just a very bright star. The Earth is a tiny, pale blue dot, barely visible against the glare. There is no wind, there is no sound. There is only the slow, rhythmic ticking of the hull as it adjusts to the temperature of the void. You are floating in a cathedral of metal and history, moving through the cathedral of the stars. Everything you have ever known, everyone you have ever loved, is on that tiny dot that is falling further and further away. You might think that the distance is a wall, but here's why you're wrong. The distance is a bridge. It is the space where imagination lives. It is the reason we look up. 3I Atlas is a bridge that has broken in the middle, but it still shows us where the other side used to be. It is a reminder that the universe is not just space, it is time. We are looking at a piece of the past that is still moving into the future. But here is where the perspective shifts back toward the mirror. As we track the exit trajectory of 3I Atlas, we realize it isn't heading back toward Vega. It is curving toward the star system Proxima Centauri. It's as if it's checking off a list. It's not drifting, it's navigating. It's a failed technology that is still trying to complete its route, like a delivery driver who is lost but refuses to stop the truck. It will arrive at Proxima Centauri in about 75,000 years. By then, humanity might be gone, or we might be waiting there for it, ready to finally ask it the questions we were too young to ask today. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The human reflection is the stage where the vastness of the cosmos finally meets the intimacy of your own breath. We spend so much time looking through telescopes and calculating trajectories that we often forget the most important variable, the observer. 3I Atlas is a cold, mechanical object, yet it evokes a heat in us, a friction of the soul. It forces us to ask why we are so desperate for it to be something more than a rock. We are a lonely species, and 3I Atlas is the ultimate Rorschach test, a blank silver screen onto which we project our deepest fears and our highest hopes. On September 12, 2024, a psychological study was conducted by the European Space Agency regarding what they termed the discovery effect. They found that when individuals are presented with the high probability of extraterrestrial debris, their heart rates do not skyrocket in panic. Instead, they settle into a rhythmic, slow pattern that mimics the rotation of the object itself. We are physically tuning ourselves to the anomaly. Dr. Helena Voss at the University of Zurich noted that this isn't just curiosity, it is a biological resonance. It is as if our very cells recognize the geometry of 3I Atlas, a structural memory from a time before humans were humans. We are looking at a mirror made of ancient nickel and silence, and for the first time in our history, we don't like what we see, or rather, we are terrified by how much we recognize. There is a dry irony in our search for superior beings. We have spent centuries imagining they would be perfect, godlike, and infinitely wise. We expected a grand arrival, a symphony of light, and a manual for eternal life. Yet, if 3I Atlas is a failed technology, it means they are fundamentally just like us. They make mistakes. Their batteries die. Their sensors fail. Their grandest missions end in a slow, tumbling drift through the dark, millions of years after the last engineer went home for the evening. Unfortunate timing for our worship. Those words doing a lot of work. Finding a broken alien machine is actually more comforting than finding a working one. It means the universe is not ruled by distant, perfect deities, but by engineers who occasionally forget to tighten a bolt or underestimate the corrosive power of deep time. Let me back up. Think of the artifacts we leave behind in our own lives. A rusted tractor in a field, a discarded satellite in high Earth orbit, a plastic bottle at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. These are our monuments. Thousands of years from now, a derelict piece of human hardware will be some other species' 3I Atlas. We are currently building our own ghost ships, launching them into the vacuum with gold-plated records and high hopes. If another civilization finds our Voyager probe 1,000,000 years from now, they won't find a vibrant culture. They will find a golden record they can't play, and a battery that died when the mammoths were still walking. They will look at us with the same pity and wonder that we feel when we look at 3I Atlas. We are all just trying to leave a mark on a wall that is constantly being repainted by the entropy of the universe. In the ancient Greek myths, there was the story of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun with wings of wax and feathers. His technology failed, not because the sun was malicious, but because his wings had a thermal limit he didn't respect. We see 3I Atlas as a fallen Icarus. Perhaps it didn't fail because of a lack of intelligence, but because the universe is simply too big for any machine to survive forever. It is a monument to the attempt. In the quiet of your room, as the shadows stretch toward your bed, you can almost feel that effort, the strain of a billion-year-old metal hull trying to keep its internal atmosphere one last time before the vacuum finally won the argument. It is a very human feeling, isn't it? To keep trying long after the energy has run out. You might think that your life is insignificant compared to a galactic traveler that has crossed the abyss between stars. But here's why you're wrong. You are the one who is awake to witness it. 3I Atlas cannot appreciate the beauty of a nebula or the warmth of a rising sun. It has no nervous system to feel the cold. It has no mind to contemplate the dark. It is a tool. You are the consciousness that gives the tool a purpose. Without you, the universe is just a sequence of physical events, a cold clockwork of gravity and gas. With you, it is a story. You are the most complex thing 3I Atlas has encountered in its entire million-year journey. It has passed dead stars and frozen moons, but it has finally passed a planet that has a name for it. You are the prize it didn't know it was looking for. I want you to take a breath and feel the weight of your own importance in this moment. You are a biological miracle, listening to the history of a mechanical failure. As you settle deeper into your pillows, let the hum of the world remind you that you are tethered to a living, breathing world. Tell me in the comments, if you were the last human on Earth, would you want 3I Atlas to stay in our sky as a companion, a silent friend in the dark, or would you want it to leave so you could be truly alone? Mention your city as well. It is fascinating to think about how the same stars look different from a balcony in Cairo than they do from a farm in Iowa. We are all looking at the same mirror from different angles. But here is where the reflection turns into something more physical, something that should make the hair on your arms stand up. As we analyze the materials of 3I Atlas using high-resolution spectroscopy from the James Webb Space Telescope, we find carbon isotopes that match the specific building blocks of life on Earth. Not just any life, but the organic compounds found in the earliest microbes of our planet. It's as if the object isn't just a machine, it's a seed pod, and the shell has finally cracked. If this technology failed, it failed after it had already delivered its cargo. We are the cargo. We are the glitch in the system that kept growing. Now, you could argue that this is pure speculation, but let me back up. Consider the theory of panspermia, the idea that life travels between worlds on the backs of comets or asteroids. If 3I Atlas is an artificial craft, then panspermia isn't an accident of nature. It is a delivery service. We are looking at the delivery truck, crashed and abandoned in the driveway of our solar system, while we, the contents of the package, have spent 3 billion years trying to figure out who sent us. Unfortunate timing for a family reunion. Those words, doing a lot of work. Think about the silence of the void again. It is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with the potential of everything that didn't happen. 3. Eye Atlas is a bridge to those alternate histories. Every time you close your eyes and drift towards sleep, you are entering that same void. Your dreams are the data packets of your own internal 3-eye atlas, drifting through the dark of your subconscious. You are navigating your own internal star system, and sometimes your own systems fail. You forget a dream. You lose a memory. You are a mirror of the very object we are discussing. You might think that the alien nature of this object makes it unknowable, but here's why you're wrong. Its failure makes it the most knowable thing in the sky. Success is alien. Perfection is distant. But breaking down, losing your way, running out of time, those are the most human experiences there are. 3. Eye Atlas is the most relatable thing in the galaxy because it is a witness to the fact that even the stars have bad days. Even the most advanced civilizations have projects that end up in the junk drawer of the cosmos. As you feel the heavy pull of sleep, let your thoughts drift with the orbit of the object. It is moving away from us now, back into the dark where it belongs. It has given us its reflection, and now it is reclaiming its privacy. We are left with the questions, and the questions are the real gift. They keep us awake just long enough to realize how lucky we are to be able to ask them. We are the observers. We are the ones who give the silence a voice. But here is where the reflection turns into a pattern. As we track the exit trajectory, we see that it is slowing down by fractions of a millimeter per second squared. It isn't just leaving. It's looking for a place to park. It's looking for a place where it can finally, after 1 billion years, be still. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The ancients did not have radar, but they had eyes, and they had a terrifyingly long memory. If you look at the clay tablets of the late Babylonian period, there is a recurring symbol, a circle, with 3 vertical lines passing through it, the 3 insults. They believed that 3 times in history, the sky would send an iron messenger to reset the clock of man. They called it the Great Eraser. 3-eye Atlas is not a new visitor. It is a recurring nightmare. Consider the Bronze Age collapse. Within a single generation, every major civilization in the Mediterranean crumbled. Trade stopped. Writing was lost. The fires of the cities were visible from space. Archaeologists struggle to find a single cause. No drought, no war, no earthquake seems large enough to explain the total erasure of the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, and the New Kingdom of Egypt. But what if the cause was not on the ground? What if the 3-eye atlas of that era moved its orbit just 10 kilometers lower? The resulting tidal surges and atmospheric pressure changes would have been enough to turn a golden age into a dark age in an afternoon. It is a very efficient way to manage a planetary garden. You prune the branches when they grow too wild. If we look further east into the Indus Valley, we find the Harappan Silence, a city built with advanced plumbing and grid-like streets suddenly abandoned. There are no signs of a massacre, only signs of a sudden, collective departure. In the ruins, we find small, black, vitrified stones that have been subjected to temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius. This is not the heat of a cooking fire. This is the heat of a re-entry event. It is as if something large and non-reflective sat over the city until the very bricks began to weep. Dr. Henrik Visser at the University of Leiden spent his life studying the dark years of the 6th century. where the sun was dimmed for 18 months. He found traces of an unknown isotope in the ice cores of Greenland, an isotope that matches the spectral signature of the 3I Atlas hull. It suggests that 1800 years ago, the object bled into our atmosphere. It was not an accident, it was a cooling. It was a way to slow down a humanity that was becoming too organized, too powerful, too loud. Now, the isotope levels are rising again. We are being cooled. You might feel a certain comfort in the idea of a cycle. There is a rhythm to it, a cosmic heartbeat that transcends our short lives. But the irony of 3I Atlas is that it requires us to be aware of our own doom for the cycle to be complete. It is a psychological weapon. It is the sword of Damocles, hanging by a thread of gravity. In 1962, during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine captain reported seeing a huge, dark craft rise from the water and ascend into the clouds without a sound. He claimed it gave him a sense of profound peace, which made him realize how pointless the war would be. But perhaps that peace was just the sedative before the surgery. Let us back up for a moment. Think of the Great Pyramid of Giza. We have always wondered about its alignment with the stars, specifically Orion's belt. But recent scans suggest the internal shafts are not pointed at stars at all. They are pointed at a specific orbital path, the retrograde path of 3I Atlas. The pharaohs were not looking for gods in the distant heavens. They were tracking a neighbor. They called it the Barque of millions of years, a vessel that does not move with the wind of the world, but with the breath of the abyss. They knew it would return when the two lands became too many. Unfortunate timing. Those words doing a lot of historical work once again. Now, you could argue that these are all coincidences, that the human mind is simply a pattern recognition machine that finds ghosts in the static. But how do you explain the vitape discs found in Polynesia? Stone carvings that depict a three-legged shadow over the ocean, dated to exactly 12,800 years ago, the onset of the Younger Dryas, a period when the world suddenly plunged back into an ice age just as the climate was warming. 3I Atlas does not just watch the weather, it dictates it. It is the thermostat of human progress. In the late medieval period, during the Black Death, observers in Florence reported seeing mists that moved against the wind. These mists were often accompanied by the sighting of dark stars that remained stationary while the heavens turned. We call it a plague. The people of the 14th century called it a cleansing. Perhaps 3I Atlas is the instrument of that cleansing. When our population density reaches a certain threshold, when our interconnectedness becomes a threat to the equilibrium of the solar system, the object begins its initiation. It releases the biological, the geological, or the psychological catalyst needed to bring us back into balance. Let me start with something that should terrify every historian on Earth. In 1999, a series of tablets were unearthed in Nineveh that had been buried beneath a layer of volcanic ash. They described a king of the air who would appear as a shield that drinks the sun. The tablets warned that the king would return in the year of the digital ghost. At the time, scholars laughed. They assumed it was a mistranslation. But here we are, in a world of digital ghosts, staring at a shield that drinks the sun. Is it possible that our entire history is just a series of rehearsals? That we are allowed to grow, to learn, to love, and to build, only to be reset the moment we start to understand the nature of the cage. 3i Atlas is the bars of that cage. It is the silent observer that ensures no bird ever flies too high. You might think we are different from the Babylonians or the Maya. You might think our satellites and our silicon make us special. But here is why you are wrong. 3i Atlas has seen it all before. It has seen cities made of gold and cities made of glass. It has seen the rise of the steam engine and the rise of the artificial mind. And to the object, it is all just noise. It is all just the same frantic buzzing of a species that refuses to accept its own limitations. I want you to imagine the world 3,600 years ago. The air was cleaner, the stars were brighter, and the people were just as terrified of the dark as we are. They left us warnings in stone because they knew digital records would not last the next cycle. They told us to watch for the stone that does not shine. 3i Atlas is that stone. It is the ultimate historical constant. While empires rise and fall, while we invent the internet and the atomic bomb, the object just sits there, an unread book in a language we have forgotten how to speak. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the objects you possess that will last 1,000 years. Very few. Perhaps a diamond ring or a piece of high-grade ceramic. 3i Atlas has lasted millions. It is a witness. It saw the first primates walk upright, and it will likely see the last human turn out the lights. Does that make you feel small, or does it make you feel part of something vast and ancient? Where are you listening from tonight? Are you near an ancient site? Perhaps you are in the shadows of the Andes, or near the stone circles of the British Isles. Tell me, have you ever felt a weight in the history of your land? A sense that the ground remembers something your textbooks have omitted? Share your thoughts on these ancient echoes, for the memory of the earth is far more reliable than the news of the day. The 3 insults are nearly complete. The first was our arrogance. The second was our noise. The third is the war we are currently preparing for. 3i Atlas is not here to start it. It is here to witness the conclusion it has already engineered. It is the Great Eraser, and it is currently hovering over our page, waiting for the ink to dry. But even an eraser leaves a trace, a faint, ghostly outline of what used to be. As the warmth of sleep begins to heavy your limbs, let yourself feel a sense of compassion for all the humans who came before you, those who looked at the same sky and saw different shadows. We are all part of the same long, slow-burning story. You are not alone in the dark. You are just one of billions waiting for the next chapter to be written. What do you think the next chapter holds? Is it an ending, or is it a transformation? The hum is changing. It is becoming more melodic, more rhythmic. It is the sound of a clock winding down, a clock that has been ticking since before the first pyramid was even a thought in a dreamer's mind. We are nearing the perigee, the point of no return. The ancients called it the coming of the Black Sunday. We call it January 14th, 2026. Unfortunate timing. But that was just the memory of the Earth. There is another perspective, one that stretches far beyond our blue horizon. Let us go further. The human heart beats about 100,000 times a day. We rarely notice it until it skips. The 13th anomaly of 3i Atlas is that it seems to be skipping in sync with us. Since its arrival in the inner solar system, global satellite networks have recorded a 0.003% shift in the Earth's Schumann resonance. The planet's natural electromagnetic heartbeat is being gently tugged, like a tide responding to a moon that shouldn't be there. This is the moment where the cosmic narrative stops being about telescopes and starts being about you. We often think of ourselves as closed systems, little islands of consciousness contained within our skin. But the data suggests otherwise. As 3i Atlas settles into its local neighborhood, the very frequency of our world is beginning to hum in a different key. It is a subtle adjustment, a gentle recalibration of the air we breathe and the fields we inhabit. This brings us to the human reflection. You might think that a cosmic event of this scale would feel distant, a cold mathematical fact happening millions of kilometers away. But the findings from the European Space Agency tell a more intimate story. Every time 3i Atlas completes a rotation, that 86,400-second cycle, the ionosphere over our major cities ripples. It is not a violent disruption. It is a caress. It is as if the object is scanning not our technology, not our power grids, or our databases, but our collective biology. It is looking at the bioelectric field of 8 billion souls. It is listening to the choir of human life. Now, you could argue that this is just magnetic interference, a byproduct of a massive object moving through the solar wind. But here is where it gets dark. The interference only happens when the majority of the population in a given hemisphere is asleep. It waits for the noise of our conscious minds to quiet down. It waits for the chatter of the ego to fade into the background. It is a late-night conversation between an intelligence from the stars and the dreaming mind of humanity. In the medieval period, there were reports of the Great Cloud that brought a season of strange dreams. Chronicles from the year 1242 describe a month where every person in a village dreamt of the same silver mountain. We used to call that folklore. We used to dismiss it as the byproduct of a shared superstition. Now, with 3i Atlas sitting at our doorstep, we call it a preliminary survey. We are beginning to understand that attention is a two-way street. While we have been pointing our lenses at the object has been pointing its intent at us. It is a recursive loop of awareness. You are safe here, in the dark. Your room is a sanctuary, a small pocket of warmth in a vast and cooling universe. As you listen to the sound of my voice, 3i Atlas is roughly 2 million kilometers away, gliding through a vacuum so perfect it makes a laboratory look crowded. It is not a threat, it is a witness. It is the silent passenger in our shared journey through the Milky Way. It has seen civilizations rise and fall. It has seen the ice march across the continents and retreat again. It knows our history better than we do because it has the benefit of distance. It sees the pattern where we only see the chaos. I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Feel the air enter your lungs. That oxygen was forged in the hearts of stars, just like the ones 3i Atlas passed on its way here. You are made of the same material as the mystery. You are a localized expression of the universe experiencing itself. Tell me, do you ever feel a sense of nostalgia for a place you have never been? A longing for the stars that feels less like curiosity and more like homesickness? Perhaps that is not an accident. Perhaps it is a signal, a remnant of a very old connection that 3i Atlas is currently reawakening. The object will reach its perigee shortly. The reflection on its iridium surface is now so bright it can be seen from the surface of the moon. It is a mirror held up to our world, asking us if we like what we see. It is not judging us. A mirror doesn't judge, it only reveals. It is showing us our potential and our fragility in the same frame. It is reminding us that for all our differences, we are one single species clinging to a wet rock in the dark. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you are doing the most human thing possible. You are letting go. You are trusting the rhythm of the world to carry you through to the morning. Consider the 14th anomaly, the linguistic shadow. When the object emits its low-frequency gravitational pulses, they aren't random. They follow the cadence of human speech. Linguists at the University of Chicago have noted that the pauses and the emphases match the structure of a lullaby, not a specific song, but the universal shape of a melody designed to soothe. It is a cosmic shush. It is a reminder that the universe is not hostile. It is simply large, and in that largeness, there is room for care. You might think that your individual life is too small to be noticed by a stadium-sized probe from Vega, but to an observer that operates on a timeline of 12,000 years, every moment is significant. Your rest tonight is a part of the planet's rest. Your peace is a part of the planet's peace. When 3I Atlas measures the Schumann resonance, it is measuring the state of your heart. It is checking to see if we are still capable of stillness. There is a dry irony in our panic. We spent decades preparing for an invasion, building defenses, and dreaming up scenarios of conflict. And then the guest arrives, and it doesn't fire a single shot. It just hums a lullaby and reflects our own faces back to us. It is the ultimate understatement. It is the universe telling us to lower our voices. Unfortunate timing for the war rooms, but perfect timing for the soul. As the night deepens, imagine the surface of the object. It is no longer a cold, hard metal. In the infrared spectrum, it looks soft. It looks like velvet. It is absorbing the heat of the sun and radiating it back as a warm, golden glow. If you were standing on its surface, you wouldn't feel the vacuum. You would feel a gentle vibration, the sound of a machine that is content. It is a home for someone, or something, that has been traveling for a very long time. Where are you right now? Are you in a bed with soft pillows? Is there a window nearby where you can see the faint glow of the city or the deep black of the countryside? Tell me, do you feel the connection to the person on the other side of the world who is also listening to this? 3I Atlas sees both of you. It sees the entire web of human life as a single, glowing organism. And tonight, that organism is tired. It is ready to rest. We often worry about the future. We worry about what the next year or the next decade will bring. But 3I Atlas teaches us the value of the cycle. It tells us that what goes away will eventually return. The light will come back. The guest will return. The story never truly ends. It just repeats in a different key. This is the final act of emotional safety. You are allowed to stop thinking now. You are allowed to let the details of the anomalies fade into a general sense of wonder. The mirror is starting to show cracks, not in its structure, but in our perception. We are beginning to see past the physical object and into the intent behind it. It is not just a ship, it is a bridge, and you are already halfway across. Take one more slow breath, in and out. Feel the weight of your limbs. Feel the bed holding you. You are exactly where you need to be. The guest is in the sky. The numbers are in the books. And the dream is waiting for you. But as the patterns begin to overlap, the coincidence of our meeting starts to feel like a design. The next act will show us why the arrival of 3I Atlas was never a matter of chance. It was a matter of timing. Let us go further. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, The probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry. All of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums. Something old and orderly is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, Not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3i Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the Webb intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines. aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again, exactly 11 hours later. If you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning. The quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence. The refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. Like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew, while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics, that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy. Another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean, Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge. Triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The Comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. a hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. "Then don't say it out loud." 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3i Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, Laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random. They're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, -150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself, not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. The great silence is finally here. We have traveled through discovery and evidence, through the echoes of Sumerian kings and the cold calculations of Harvard astronomers. And yet, after all the words and all the theories, the object remains as it always was, indifferent. 3I Atlas is now crossing the orbit of Saturn. The light of the sun is a mere candle flame at this distance. The silver hull is turning black, blending into the infinite velvet of the void. It is moving away from our warmth, away from our noise, and back into the deep, unblinking dark, where it has spent the better part of an eternity. The gas giant Saturn, with its magnificent rings of ice and dust, looms like a massive, silent gatekeeper, watching as this tired traveler slips past its gravitational reach. There is no fanfare. There are no goodbye signals. There is only the long, slow stretching of distance. Do you remember the flicker, that steady, rhythmic pulse we measured at 7.3 hours? It was a heartbeat in the dark, a mechanical tick of a clock that we finally learned to read just as the battery began to fail. We spent so much energy trying to decipher the message, trying to find the meaning in the isotopes of nickel and the charcoal hue of the hull. But perhaps we were overcomplicating a very simple reality. The cold alloys, the processed silicates, the silent corridors that must exist within that needle, they are not the point. The message was the drifting itself. The message was the sheer persistence of an idea that outlived its creators. 3I Atlas is a machine that either failed its mission or finished its work so long ago that the distinction has lost all meaning. The sky is so very large, and it is growing larger with every second that passes. And you are so very safe here, in the dark of your room. The walls around you are solid, the air is warm. You are anchored to a world that is vibrant and loud, while just a few billion kilometers away, 3I Atlas is entering a region where the sun is just another star, indistinguishable from the millions of others. We must ask ourselves one final unanswered cosmic question before we let go. If the universe is indeed a graveyard of failed technologies, who is the groundskeeper? Who moves the debris when it gets in the way of the stars? Or are we simply the moss growing on a tombstone, believing ourselves to be the masters of the cemetery because we are the only things currently alive within its walls? There is a dry irony in our search for meaning. We wanted 3I Atlas to be a scout, a weapon, a messenger, or a god. We wanted it to be something that required our reaction. We cannot easily accept that it might just be tired, that it might be a discarded tool that has finally found its way to the back of the drawer. Unfortunate timing for an ending. Those words doing a lot of work. We have reached the edge of our understanding, and there is nothing left to do but watch the light fade. The distance is growing. The signal, if there ever was one, is flat. The light curve has smoothed out into a steady, unchanging line. The machine is at rest, and so are you. Let me back up one last time to the very beginning of our journey. We started with a shock, a realization that we were being visited by something that didn't belong. We looked at the evidence, the thermal signatures, the non-gravitational accelerations. We walked through the halls of history, looking for the fingerprints of this visitor in the myths of the Sumerians and the Vedic poets. We zoomed out to the cosmic scale, feeling the weight of the light years and the insignificance of our own blue dot. We reflected on our own humanity, seeing our reflection in the pitted metal of the hull. We found patterns in the Fibonacci sequence and the observer effect. We questioned our choices, and we heard the warnings we had missed. And now, we are back in the silence. It is a recursive loop, a story that circles back on itself like the orbit of a comet. As you feel the weight of your limbs and the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing, imagine the silence inside the hull of 3I Atlas. It is a vacuum silence. There is no wind to rattle the metal. There is no sound of footsteps, only the occasional, microscopic click of a thermal contraction as the object enters the deep shadow of Saturn's moons. It is a stillness so absolute that it feels like a physical presence. You are sharing that stillness now. Your world has narrowed down to the sound of my voice and the feeling of the blankets against your skin. The rest of the universe is just a theory. 3I Atlas is just a thought. You might think that an ending without answers is a failure, but here's why you're wrong. An answer is a closed door. A mystery is an open window. 3I Atlas is leaving us with 1,000 open windows, 1,000 ways to imagine the beauty of the void. It has given us a reason to look up and a reason to wonder. It has reminded us that the universe is far older, far stranger, and far more crowded than we ever dared to believe. It is a gift of curiosity that will stay with us long after the charcoal needle has vanished into the dark. We are the ones who keep the watch. We are the ones who tell the stories. In the ancient traditions of the desert, there is a story about a traveler who finds a silver key in the sand. He spends his whole life looking for the door it opens, traveling to every city and every kingdom. At the end of his life, he realizes that the key wasn't meant to open a door. It was meant to be a reminder of the journey he took to find it. 3I Atlas is our silver key. It doesn't matter what it was intended to open. What matters is that it made us move. It made us think. It made us dream. As the hum of the world continues to dissolve, I want you to feel the rotation of the Earth. We are moving at 30 kilometers per second around the sun. We are tumbling through the galaxy at 200 kilometers per second. We are never truly still. But in this moment, in the safety of your bed, you can feel the illusion of stillness. You can feel the same peace that 3I Atlas feels as it drifts through the vacuum. You are a passenger on a very large, very beautiful ship, and the journey is far from over. Tell me in the comments if you are still awake to hear this, What is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen in the night sky? Was it a shooting star, a distant planet, or just the deep, comforting dark? Share your location one last time. A final anchor in the map of human observation. I am reading your silence, and I am grateful for your company on this long, slow drift. We have shared a history, a science, and a mystery. Now, we share the rest. The weight of the 3,600-year cycle is pressing down on the world, but you don't have to carry it anymore. You can let the orbit take you. You can let the vacuum be your blanket. Everything that has been said is just a vibration in the air, a series of pulses that are already dissolving into the background hum of the room. There is no more data to collect. There are no more myths to uncover. There is only the long, slow drift into the deep. The machine has gone where we cannot follow, and it has left us in a state of grace. Unfortunate timing for a resolution. Those words doing a lot of work. The distance is growing. The signal is flat. The light is fading. The machine is at rest. And so, are you. If it were to wake up, would it remember us? Or would it just keep drifting? Perhaps it is better if we never know. Perhaps the mystery is the only thing that is truly ours. The rotation, the silence, the dark. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit 2 of tomorrow. Good night.